In 1989, wealth carried an assumption of safety. Abuse was something that happened elsewhere, to other families, in other neighborhoods. Beverly Hills was supposed to be immune. So when the murders happened, the public instinctively searched for a motive that fit the setting: money, entitlement, greed. Those explanations were familiar, comfortable, and, most importantly, did not threaten the myth that success equals moral order. The ethics of perception. Ethically, perception shapes judgment long before evidence does. The Menendez brothers didn't look like victims. They were male. They were affluent. They were articulate. And in the cultural imagination of the late 80s and early 90s, those traits disqualified someone from victimhood. Trauma, especially sexual abuse, was still framed as something that left visible scars or produced easily recognizable, broken people. The idea that terror could coexist with privilege was almost unthinkable. Modern trauma psychology dismantles that assumption. We now understand that abuse thrives in secrecy, hierarchy, and power. Exactly the conditions present in the Menendez household. Control doesn't always announce itself through chaos. Sometimes it wears a tailored suit and demands silence. Power, fear, and moral agency. Jose Menendez, as described by witnesses and experts, was not merely authoritarian. He was absolute. In trauma ethics, power without accountability is corrosive. When a child's autonomy is systematically erased, emotionally, psychologically, sexually, their moral agency does not disappear, but it becomes distorted. Choices are made under conditions of coercion, fear, and learned helplessness. This doesn't transform violence into virtue, but it does complicate intent. Ethical judgment requires asking not just what someone did, but what options they reasonably believed were available to them. If escape feels impossible, authority feels omnipresent, and disclosure feels lethal, desperation becomes the soil in which catastrophic decisions grow. Greed versus survival narratives. The greed narrative was persuasive because it was simple. Two spoiled sons kill for inheritance. Case closed. But simplicity is not the same as truth. Trauma-informed ethics asks whether financial gain was the motive or merely the aftermath. Money can coexist with fear. In fact, it often becomes irrelevant when the primary driver is survival, especially psychological survival. The brothers' behavior after the murders was used as proof of guilt and callousness. But trauma does not produce tidy remorse. It produces fragmentation, dissociation, and sometimes behavior that looks disturbingly normal. Ethical interpretation falters when we expect victims to perform pain in ways that reassure us. Reframing the question. So the question may be flawed as it's commonly posed. Victims or villains? What the jury saw was excess. What trauma experts see is dysregulation. After years of total control, financial, emotional, bodily, money becomes more than currency. It becomes proof of autonomy. For someone emerging from chronic abuse, spending is not about acquisition, it's about agency. The ability to choose, impulsively and without permission, can feel intoxicating. In trauma literature, this phase is often chaotic. Survivors oscillate between numbness and overcompensation, between paralysis and reckless motion. Stillness feels dangerous. Silence feels like a trap. There's also the matter of grief, how it is supposed to look versus how it actually manifests. The public expects mourning to be quiet, restrained, and legible. Black clothes, tears on cue, modest behavior. But trauma-related grief often rejects those scripts. It can appear inappropriate, performative, even offensive. Laughing too loudly, spending too freely, acting as though nothing matters, because for years, nothing belonged to you. And this is where the ethics of perception harden into judgment. The spoiled killer trope relies on a narrow moral imagination. It assumes that virtue is visible, that pain wears rags, that suffering must look humble to be believed. Wealth disrupts empathy. A Rolex becomes evidence. A sports car becomes motive. The prosecution didn't just present purchases, they presented a character study, one designed to provoke resentment. The subtext was clear. These boys had everything, therefore they could not have been victims. But ethics asks us to interrogate that logic. Is moral credibility contingent on austerity? Do we subconsciously require victims to perform deprivation in order to earn compassion? And if so, what does that say about how justice is distributed? There is another uncomfortable layer here. America's relationship with money and punishment. Excess is often treated as a greater sin than violence itself. The spending spree shocked the public more than years of alleged abuse ever did. In that imbalance, we glimpse a cultural truth, one that values property and decorum over psychological survival. None of this proves innocence, but it does destabilize certainty. The ethical failure may not lie in noticing the spending, but in refusing to contextualize it, in collapsing complex human behavior into a single, convenient narrative, in mistaking trauma responses for moral confession. So the deeper question remains: were the purchases a celebration of murder, or a clumsy, desperate attempt to feel safe in a world that had finally stopped enforcing silence? And if our answer depends on how expensive the coping mechanism was, then the verdict may say more about us than about them. You're circling a really important distinction here, so let's push it further and sharpen the ethical lens. What makes this case so unsettling is that the violence resists simple moral categorization. Overkill looks like rage, but in trauma psychology it often reads as panic without an off switch. When someone believes, rightly or wrongly, that their survival depends on total neutralization of a threat, the nervous system doesn't calibrate force, it floods it. The body keeps firing long after the mind has lost any capacity for proportional judgment. That's where the prosecution's narrative runs into ethical friction. Malice implies deliberative cruelty, the intention to cause suffering for its own sake. But fear-driven violence is different. It's not expressive, "I hate you, therefore I hurt you." It's instrumental and distorted. "If you are not gone, I will be destroyed." Ethically, those are not the same mental states, even if they produce the same tragic outcome. Overkill is evidence, or symptom. The legal system often treats excess violence as a multiplier of guilt, yet forensic psychology frequently treats it as diagnostic. Repeated shots, returning to reload, continuing after the threat is objectively neutralized. These behaviors are consistent with what's sometimes called threat fixation, where the brain is locked onto annihilating a perceived danger. In that state, moral reasoning is not absent, but it is severely narrowed. The actor is not weighing right versus wrong. They are weighing existence versus extinction. The monster narrative. You're a monster framing matters ethically. If a person sincerely believes someone is omnipotent, sadistic, and inescapable, then the act of stopping becomes morally warped. It doesn't excuse the act, but it reframes intent. The ethical question becomes less, "Why did you hate them so much?" and more, "Why did you believe there was no other way to survive?" Hatred seeks domination, fear seeks escape. Separating act from actor. From an ethical standpoint, separating the violence from the desperation is not about minimizing harm. It's about moral accuracy. Condemning the act is necessary. Understanding the actor is responsible. Ethics collapses if it can only judge outcomes and not internal states. The uncomfortable middle ground. The paradox is that fear can produce acts that look indistinguishable from cruelty. Ethical maturity requires holding two truths at once. The victims suffered horrifically and did not deserve it. The brutality alone cannot conclusively tell us why it happened. If we refuse that second truth, we risk turning ethics into optics, judging intent solely by how ugly the result appears. But if we accept it, we're forced into a far more unsettling question. How many acts we label as evil are actually the catastrophic endpoint of fear left unrecognized, untreated, or ignored? That doesn't absolve, but it does humanize. An ethical analysis, at its best, is not about comfort. It's about precision. A hung jury is not a failure of justice. It is evidence of moral uncertainty. It means the community, speaking through 12 citizens, could not reconcile the facts with a single, clean narrative of guilt. When the state responds to that ambiguity not by tolerating it, but by correcting it, the ethical stakes shift dramatically. The question is no longer what happened, but what outcome is acceptable. The court's dual role and its temptation. Courts are meant to be arbiters, not authors. Their ethical duty is to provide a framework in which truth can be evaluated, not to prune truth until it fits a preferred verdict. When Judge Weisberg limited how abuse evidence could function, allowing it to be heard but forbidding it from meaningfully informing culpability, he created a contradiction. The jury was asked to absorb emotional reality while being instructed to treat it as legally inert. Ethically, that's a sleight of hand. It asks jurors to feel empathy but deny its relevance, to recognize trauma but pretend it has no causal weight. That isn't neutrality, it's curation. Imperfect self-defense as a moral valve. Imperfect self-defense exists precisely because human fear is not always reasonable, but it can still be sincere. It is the law's concession that moral blame is not binary. Removing that instruction collapses a spectrum of culpability into a single point: murder or acquittal, angel or monster. From an ethical perspective, that move doesn't simplify truth, it distorts it. It forces jurors to choose between intellectual honesty and moral mercy. If they believe the defendants were genuinely terrified but not legally justified, there is nowhere for that belief to go. The verdict becomes less a reflection of conscience and more an act of compliance. Manufactured certainty. What's especially troubling is the motivation: restoring order. Order is a political value, not a moral one. Justice is comfortable with mess. Ethics accepts ambiguity. But institutions often fear both, because ambiguity weakens authority. A manslaughter verdict would have acknowledged something unsettling. That extreme abuse can fracture moral agency without erasing it. By constraining the jury's interpretive freedom, the court didn't eliminate doubt, it displaced it. The uncertainty that belonged in the verdict was relocated into the process itself. The ethical cost of all or nothing. Forcing an all-or-nothing choice is ethically defensible only if reality itself is all or nothing. This case wasn't. When a judge narrows the lens so severely that jurors cannot express nuanced moral judgment, the verdict ceases to be a communal moral statement and becomes a procedural artifact. So the deeper ethical question isn't whether the conviction was legal, it likely was. It's whether justice can survive when law prioritizes decisiveness over discernment. When emotional truth is acknowledged but stripped of consequence, the court doesn't resolve moral tension, it suppresses it. Today, Lyle and Eric are in their 60s. They have spent a significant portion of their lives in prison, more than the time they spent alive on the outside. Now, they have become advocates for other victims of similar circumstances. Throughout their time inside, they have demonstrating no signs of violence, making them role models for their fellow inmates. Final ethical reflection. We ask the pertinent question one more time now with victims, villains, or both. The real essence of justice calls for us to bear two contradictory truths at the same time. They are both villains for the lives they snatch away from others. On the other hand, they are victims for the lives they had to carry on leading. But here comes the last ethical dilemma I want to leave for you. Is there a point where the debt is entirely paid off? If prison is meant for rehabilitation, then have they not taken all necessary steps to be able to reintegrate into society? If it stands as a form of punishment, haven't they already had enough of it? Host, thank you for joining us for this intellectual exploration. This is indeed true crime stories with ethics. If you'd like to see more cases tackled in this level of depth, please subscribe, share, and give this video a like. The truth isn't consistently black and white. It's often laid out in the complexities of gray. Our new videos touching upon new case studies and their real-life anecdotes are uploaded every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at a specific time UK 1600 and USA 1100. If you find yourself intrigued and interested in learning about new criminal tales, remember to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, share it, and grab the bell icon. Thanks for watching.